very often, you know, people turn in scripts and they think they're wonderful and they don't understand why they don't get bought right away and made into hit movies or hit television movies. There are a lot of reasons for that. And over the years, since I have specialized in writers, especially beginning writers, I've sort of got a little catalog of mistakes and problems that you run across, and things that when I read a script, I know that there are going to be some problems when I read the rest of the when I finish reading the script. I've run a consulting service, and I've also taught a couple of courses at some local schools on screenwriting and beginning screenwriting especially. I'm never going to make you a great screenwriter. I'm not going to make you Joe Esterhaus, who wrote Basic Instinct, for example, or Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon, right out of UCLA. Those guys have talent, but what they needed to do at the very beginning was refine their talent and get it down to where everything was in good shape, all the ducks were in a row, and then there was something that people didn't have to worry about the beginner's mistakes that we often see in screenplays. So the question is then, what do I do with my screenplay? Well, a little while back I said you must get an agent. Yes, you do, or give it to a producer. But before you do that, you want to make sure your screenplay is in the best possible shape. And how do you do that? Well, after you've typed it and written it and gone through the spell check and everything like that, is this any good? How do you know if it's any good? Have I made mistakes in form and storytelling and structure or something like that? Well, you must find a professional, somebody in the business, somebody who doesn't know you and like you. Don't give it to your wife or your brother-in-law or your sister or a couple guys you go bowling with. They, want to like your screenplay and are not going to be able to tell you the truth because they're friends of yours. And B, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the knowledge. They may like the story, or they may like the character, or they may just think it's a wonderful thing, but they don't know. They don't look at it with the jaundiced eye of the average reader. Since I've been a reader for a good many years, maybe I have read maybe 10,000 scripts in my life. That's a lot. But so I have a little bit of background and I've seen most of the kinds of scripts and most of the problems that people are going to face. So you want to get somebody like me in the business who's read a few screenplays and can give you constructive advice. You can take classes. If you live near a college where somebody teaches screenwriting, that's a good way to begin. There are several books on screenwriting for beginners and more advanced people. There are various periodicals that are published around the country that give you advice. But basically you want a one-on-one feedback from somebody who can help you. So now let's talk about some of those problems that you face. And we'll talk about basic things here. We're not going to talk. We're not going to get cute as to do flashbacks within a flashbacks and flash forwards and technical terms with dissolves and things like that. A director is going to handle that for you. Okay, so it's basic storytelling when you do your screenplay. You don't want to get too cute, but you want to be able to tell the story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And as you know, I hope at this point you know, that all screenplays have a 3-act structure. Well, most of them do. If you don't have that, you're in trouble right off the bat. What is the 3-act structure? It's the first thing I look for when I read a screenplay. Has the writer set up the story well? That means Act 1, you set up your characters, your main characters. Not all of them, but your main characters, a couple of heroes, and maybe a villain or two. And by the end of that, that should take you, so I'm going to give you some rough page numbers here, and you don't have to live or die by them, but within somewhere between 20 and 30 pages, you should set up your first act. Then your second act, is you've met these characters and then your story really begins. And so you get your characters in some kind of trouble, you see the problems they face, and they are struggling with it. And that takes the bulk of your screenplay, almost 2/3 of it, or at least half. So that's another 60 pages. And then when you get around page 90, now once again, don't hold me to page numbers, that's a mistake. You finish off your screenplay, your last act, and you tie up everything. You solve the problems, find the killer, whatever it is that your story is about, get your lovers together, and the police come in, and then out. I hope they're not after me. Would that play on the track? Well, anyway, those are the things. So what you want to do economically at the beginning is set up your characters. And set them up the way you think they should be, the way they'll be attractive. Now, one of the important reasons for setting up your characters in the beginning is so we know who the story is about. There's another reason, a very practical reason, is if you give it to an actor, the first thing he's going to want to do is know what kind of a guy he's playing. What's his character? What do I have to do? And most of that stuff is in your first act. Your major character beats, setting up your character, the kind of person he or she is, and then you can go from there. And you set up all the things that you need for your character, or most of them. So the talents or fears or desires of that character are there, and you play them out using them in the second and third act. And then you also have to have the beginning of the problem, which means the introduction of your antagonist or your villain in some cases. And he doesn't have to be quite as well developed, but you want to develop him as much as possible and give him something that makes him different than your hero. And then by the end of that, why these two people are coming in conflict. So basically, once you set up your 1 or 2 or 3 characters in the beginning, by the end of the time you've set them up, there is a goal. Your main character has to have a goal. What's he looking for? What does he want to do? Usually the antagonist is keeping him from that goal or wants to get whatever it is the hero has away from him. Now there are lots of films who break that rule. Lots of films that break that rule. Bad grammar. So nothing is rigid. But anyway, that's it. So the struggle will be throughout most of the second act between your antagonist and your protagonist, your hero and your villain, the man and the woman, whatever your story is about, whatever they are seeking, and what keeps your hero from gaining his goal. I'll give you a couple of cliches here. One of the things that I usually is you want an attractive or likable hero faced with nearly, keyword there is nearly insurmountable odds in quest of a worthwhile goal. And of course that goal shouldn't be money, but that's an aside. Money is never a good reason to build a movie around. There are dozens and dozens of Hollywood movies lying in the shelves there that were all about money. So it's about human things. People relate to human desires and human fears, and that is the basis. And remember now, I told you in the first act you develop your characters because movies are about people. Right? That's more important than actually your story, although your story is very important. But good, strong characters make your story move, because almost every story's been shot. We've told every story from every conceivable way, but tell one more again, slightly differently. Give your character a little bit of nuance. Give him something that we haven't seen before. And don't spend a whole lot of time doing it. Okay, those are your basic beginning problems. Now, let's talk about some particular problems that we find in the first act. One of the first things that I see is overlong descriptions. I pick up a script and I'm going to read for 2 or 3 pages of descriptions of houses or cars or clothes or God knows what. I'm bored already, and you don't need it. You have to learn to shorthand your stage directions and your description. Part of your skill as a screenwriter is to set the scene economically, all right, and without too much detail, because nothing is going to be exactly, or very few things are going to be exactly as you have written it. And then leave it up to the experts on any movie crew who can do it. If you need a house, well, if it's an old house, a new house, an apartment, a condo, a ranch house, whatever, you can say that and only describe a house, for example, where it's really important to the screenplay and the story. And then leave the rest to the art director. It's the same with clothes. One of the things that is really a sign of a beginning writer is minute description of what a character is wearing. Unless they have some bearing on the story or one or two of the other people that he's going to meet, don't do it. Don't tell me what kind of shoes he's wearing, or how much his jacket cost, or is she wearing a push-up bra or not, unless it's important to her character. Then you might want to mention it. If you want to talk about a girl walking down the street not wearing a bra, that tells you a little bit of something about her. And that's all you have to say, because we're going to see what she's wearing, and that's going to establish her. So you don't have to tell us about anything else unless it's important. If she has a big purse, for example, that's important, especially if there's some things in it that are going to affect the story later on. So do not, to sum that part of it, don't over-describe either the look of your characters or the look of your setting. It's important to have those things, but not too much. Then you don't want to introduce in the first act, boy, that's a odd saying, so you don't want to introduce too many characters too soon, because the reader is not going to remember all those people. So that's why in the first few pages you want to concentrate on your hero and heroine and a villain or two and so forth, without too many other characters getting in the way. You can introduce them as the story unfolds, but if in 5 or 10 or 15 pages you've introduced 7 major characters, all with names and descriptions and cars and baggage and shoes and guns and eyeglasses, my eyes are spinning then, and I've lost interest in the story because I can't keep track of it. When 8 pages later I've got to look back and find out who a certain character is because I don't remember him. You've introduced too many. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but don't introduce your entire squad of soldiers right at the outset. Slowly bring them in. And you don't have to describe minor characters either. A cop is a cop, unless he's important to the story. A policeman, an Irish policeman, walks into the story. Don't tell me his name is Pat and he's got flat feet and 4 kids and had corned beef and cabbage for dinner last night. I don't care about that, unless it's important to the story. So one of the things I keep emphasizing here is, unless it's important to the story. You can't waste a lot of time in screenplays putting in things that aren't important, that we don't care about. They may be important to you and you should know all of these things, but you don't put them in the story. When you start out developing your character, to go back to your main characters for a moment, you should know everything you possibly can about your main characters and your villains. You know, these are things that you should know. You develop that character in your notes, in your mind, on the 3x5 cards, whatever is your particular way of approaching a character. You should know where he went to grammar school, and what kind of car his dad had, and things like that. But it doesn't have to be in the screenplay. This helps you in developing his reactions and timing and the way he will be later on. You know these things, we don't. I don't have to know about how he did in high school, unless it's important to the story. If he was an athlete in high school and he is an athlete now, or he's an athlete gone to seed, I should know that, but not much more than that. I don't want to see flashbacks of him falling on his face unless we're doing a story about the development or degeneration of a high school athlete.